Right, I'm with Martin Edmondson, who's the Chief Executive of Graduates Yorkshire. We've been talking at True Leads today about the graduate experience, and one thing that came up was the fact that the largest corporate recruiters are continuing to invest in websites and career sites that we know that the graduates just aren't really using that much. Their behaviour is to come and apply for jobs. And maybe come back and look at corporate sites if they've got some interest from the employer. But aside from that, they're just not looking at the other content that these employers are spending a lot of money on. So, Martin, why are they doing this, and what is it going to take for these employers to stop doing it?
I think the first reason they're doing it is that there's now a fairly embedded tradition amongst the big graduate recruiters to that one thing you just do every year is develop a new, sort of pretty flash-looking career site, for that year's intake to make an impact. It feels like a very competitive market, and actually often is for certainly the top 5% of graduates. It is very competitive, and you feel if you haven't put out a really strong, clear new message each year, that somehow you might be letting yourself down in that market. And I suspect it's partly a kind of courage thing for the employers to go, actually, hold on a second, we're getting still lots and lots and lots of applications. Maybe our actual brand in and of itself is enough to draw these people in without this annual investment each year in a brand new bit of sort of creative and design and website launch for that next year's intake. So I think there's a sort of partly we've always done it and this is the way it's done aspect to this, but also it's partly a slight fear of change in terms of saying, well, all our competitors do this, it would be a fairly brave leap of faith perhaps for us to be the one this year that doesn't do that and actually doesn't invest in that sort of site. And I think it's going to be interesting as these employers harness more of the sort of social media side of things in particular, whether that can fulfill some of that role at a lower cost, allied to their existing perhaps consumer brand strengths offered in many cases that actually in and of themselves have quite a lot of power to attract candidates, graduates, applications.
So there's not. Is there much social activity going on in this area? I mean, there's a lot of talk about it. Clearly, we're at a recruiting unconference. It's what this is all about. But do you see graduate employers beginning to adopt more social approaches to the graduate experience?
I think they are beginning to, and I think in some cases, if you look at the big, large graduate recruiters, they've convinced themselves in some cases that they're doing quite a lot of social, but when you dig under the surface, there's often quite a lot of compliance and protocol sitting behind that. I've heard talk of people, going to their line manager to sign off a tweet still, in that kind of context, which isn't really the spirit, certainly, of social media, and I also don't think means that you'll get the really effective elements of things like Twitter and Facebook if you're putting that kind of full-on corporate control on your communications and you're not giving across the kind of authentic experience that you see when you look at some of the kind of classic case studies of big graduate recruiters using social media. So Deloitte New Zealand is the one that's often brought up, where they had graduates on the scheme doing live streaming on Facebook of what it's like to work there in a really sort of down-to-earth. It wasn't expensive filming, it was authenticity that mattered. And I think that's the word in the end that actually, if these at times perhaps slightly conservative larger graduate recruiters want to hang on to as something that can help them move away from perhaps every year shelling out enormous amounts of cash on these new flash career sites, is that authentic matters more than anything else. And actually, when we ran focus groups of graduates looking at career sites they liked and didn't like, the things that they really appreciated was companies that seemed to be genuinely expressing the values of that business in the brand they put out there on their career site.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much.
No problem.